Alright, we're doing a track tier list. Someone's finally got to make a video about it. And to start off with, gotta go with the two band tracks. Because these two tracks are terrible to play on online. If I had to put one over the other one, though, I'd probably put Spyro. But portal trapping sucks. As for the track specifically, Hyper is worse than Spyro, but they're both pretty much unplayable due to portal trapping. But Hyper's just more unplayable because it's got the strongest blue fire in the game. So not only do you kill someone right behind you, but then you pretty much lap them right after because they're going really slow around the track. Where if you die on Spyro, it's a sacred track, so it's not as bad, but portal trapping is just really degenerate. Not a lot of skill. Yeah, that's about it. Let's go into D tier now. And I'm gonna have to say, out of the legal tracks, the worst one to play is Tiny Temple. Similar reason to Hyper, it's just that the blue fire is really strong here. And when you die right after the pad, you pretty much are going to be really far behind. If you die twice right after the pad, you're probably going to get lapped here, which leads to lap kills. The track's also really easy to drive too, so it's hard to play offensive here after lap 1. Lap 1 actually isn't too bad. It's just that after lap 1, it just becomes a problem with the lap hitting. Another track that's really bad with lap hits is Blizzard Bluff. Similar story to Spyro and Hyper, is that it's just the Sacred Fire version of Tiny Temple. The track's really short and has shortcuts that are very punishing to fail, and they're not like super hard shortcuts to make, but they're not like easy either, so when you do fail them, you're just screwed pretty much. Lap hits happen here, getting lapped happens here pretty often. It's not really a favorite track of mine to play. I just think that it's kind of stupid. After Blizzard, I'd say the next worst track when it comes to lap hits and just how the track plays online, I'm gonna have to go with Thunderstruck, which sucks because I enjoy time trialing this track quite a bit. Actually, I enjoy time trialing all three of these tracks, but Thunder, similar to Tiny Temple in that it's a blue fire track where it's fairly easy to get lapped on, but it's not as bad as Tiny Temple because the track's a lot more technical, so it's more fun to drive on. It's also got pretty cool shortcuts that are difficult to do, which it makes it better, but I still have to put it in the same tier as these tracks here. They're just not that good to play in online because it's really hard to play aggressive here, really hard to approach, and way too punishing to die on. More often than not, someone is going to be lapping the lobby, and it's not really too fun. Speaking of tracks where it's hard to play offensive, we're gonna go with Twilight Tour as our next track, as similar to Thunder and Tiny Temple. This track here has really fast blue fire, where you go the same speed as missiles here. These two you go faster than missiles, but here you go the same speed, so it's still not really easy to approach here. The track's also really easy to drive on, like Tiny Temple. Lap hits don't really happen here though, so I guess that's good, but still not really one of my favorites to play. Just kind of gets boring after lap one here. You're just pretty much fighting in mid spots, and first usually is just able to break away with a shield. There's also only like 2 Wumpa crates in this entire track, and one of them, well, it's not technically it's more than two. It actually has a lot, but since it's cycle based and there's only 2 spots where you can get Wumpa, it becomes pretty problematic. Yeah, that word. Um, let's see. Next track, I'm gonna say to round out the D tier. One more track for this tier I wanted to play. Where is it? Oh, there it is, Baron. This track just is really small and has a bunch of item crates everywhere, so it's just really chaotic for no reason. So I'm not really a fan of it in online. It just kind of becomes whoever can roll the best items wins here, just magnified to a bigger scale, which not really too big of a fan of. I think that this track in general, not my favorite when it comes up, and I'd still rather play it than these tracks here for online, but it's not really my favorite. I think that it's just way too item dependent. And yeah, we'll jump into C tier with that. And starting up with C tier, I'm gonna put Polar Pass. I think that this track would probably be B tier, maybe even A tier, if it just didn't have Blue Fire. But Blue Fire just kind of throws the whole balance off with this track. It becomes like Tiny Temple in that if you die right after the pad, you're pretty much screwed. Um, it's just really hard to be offensive here. The track's really tightens up in some spots. Um, I also just personally don't like it. I'm really slow here, to be honest with you. But I also just think this track doesn't really play that well in online because of the Blue Fire. I think if it was just a Sacred Fire track like it was in the original game, would probably be better. But yeah, I'd say bottom of C tier is a good place for this track here. Um, Next up, I'm gonna go with Meteor Gorge. There's not really too much going on Meteor Gorge. It's just kind of like its own weird track. I'm also just really slow here as well, to be honest with you. But I do think that there's not really too much going on this track. Like, yeah, there's Pancho Cut, and that's pretty cool, but like it only saves like 1 second. It's a very driving dependent track and not really too much item play going on, which I think does make it kind of cool, but it usually just gets really boring if you're up at the front, and then if you're in the middle spots just fighting with each other and not really too much going on. Um so yeah, that's why that's there. Another track really similar to Meteor is this track here. Um, there is an engine pulse wood here, so there is opportunity to catch up, but more often than not, the player in first place is really easy for them to break away here. They're able to just trap really tight parts of the track, crates, the pads, very trappable here. and usually first place just breaks away, and then everybody else just fights each other. Kind of like Meteor. It's just a little better because there is an engine pulse width spot, but even then, it's really hard to make it work because it's like really crowded, really tight there. So not too big of a fan of this track, to be honest with you. Let's see, track after this, we're gonna go with Tiny Arena. This track's grown on me a little bit over the past couple of months. I've time trialed it a little, and I've gotten better at it. And it's I still wouldn't say it's my favorite track. It's far from it, but I'd say I can tolerate it more now. But it's way too long, and when you're stuck in the bottom half positions here, you're still just gonna be pretty much item roulette, just killing each other over and over. So, not too much of a fan of it. I think that there's far better tracks to play in online than Tiny Arena, but I did used to have it in D tier, but I think it's gotten a little better for me. So there's my take on that track there. Um, Next, I'm gonna go with Dragon Mines because, yeah, well, for one, I'd probably put it in B tier if it didn't have a chance of getting lap glitched with a mask in the shortcut. That it's kind of a nitpicky thing, but I think that it really makes the track a lot worse. Um, Not too big of a fan of that in that regard. So I think that if there was no lap hit, it'd be better. But regardless, it's still like a pretty good track. It's just the lap hit problem that brings it, or not the lap hit problem, but I guess there is lap hitting that happens here if you're really good. But I usually enjoy when I play this track. So it does have issues though, so that's why it's in C tier. As for the next track, I'm gonna go with Deep Sea, which is the highest rating track that's got faster Blue Fire out of the four of Hyper, Thunder, and Tiny Temple. I think it plays the best of the four, and so usually a pretty fun track to drive. The reserves are pretty free here, but lap hits do happen here. The blades suck. If those things weren't an issue, I'd probably raise it up a tier or two. But again, it's just another track that has issues that make it not fun to play in online. But yeah, there's that track there. And let's see, what else we got? Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to put Electron in C tier. While I enjoy driving around the track, it's really boring in online. It's just really long with NMG. I'd probably put it in A tier if the Speed Ghost was allowed, to be honest with you. But yeah, no Speed Ghost. Electron's really boring. It's really long. Um, does have a lap glitch problem as well. It's not as bad as mine's, but still an issue. But yeah, it's kind of long and kind of boring. It's pretty much a Blue Fire version of Tiny Arena, but it's better because, well, it's not better. It's around the same because there's just Blue Fire pads everywhere. So if you do die, you can get fire back relatively quickly, unlike Polar Pass or Tiny Temple, where you're pretty much starved without Blue Fire for a whole lap, so you just fall way behind. There is comeback potential on this track too. There's a engine pulse wood spot, but I think this track would be significantly better if the Speed Ghost was allowed. It just isn't though, so it becomes pretty boring, pretty strung out. And yeah, that's Electron for you there. Um, rounding out C tier, I'm gonna put Out of Time. And thing is with Out of Time, oh crap, that may have. Oh no, that's fine. Okay, the thing is with Out of Time is that it's similar to Puller and Tiny Temple, where the blue fire pad's at the end of the track. I do like this one a little bit more though, because I think the track's like more difficult to drive, which I think's a good thing, but it still shares the same issues. Is that like if you just die right after, you're pretty much screwed. Um, but then driving around the track itself, if you know how to drive it, it's pretty fun. The reserves are pretty tight here, so it's not like super free if you break away, and there's other places you can die as well, but having a big death point right after the blue fire pad does make this track a bit of an issue. And with that, I think we can go on into B tier. Oh wait, no, one last track. Gingerbread Joyride. This track would be in a higher tier if there wasn't that really terrible shortcut right after the first pad, or the blue fire pad, where it's blind, can't really see it. It's really easy to trap, easy to lose fire there, easy to fail the cut. Just kind of ruins the whole track for me. Otherwise, I'd probably put it up a tier or two. But yeah, not much else to say. Oh, the jellies suck here too. If there was no jellies and no terrible shortcut, I'd actually probably put this track in S tier. But it's in C tier because of those two things, unfortunately. So yeah, we'll go on into B tier now. I'm gonna start off with Android here. Um, Android just works. It's just boring. There's like a really long sacred track, and like there's maybe 4 or 5 box sets here. So it gets a little boring, but I'd say it at least functions well. So don't really have much else to say here other than that. It works, and yeah, that's it. Um, what do we put next? I think I'm gonna go with Boogie. It's kind of like the opposite of Android in that it's just really chaotic. Similar to Baron in that way, but Boogie's a smaller track, so it wants to just be fully chaotic, and I think that kind of gives it its charm. It's always just a weird track to play, which I think makes it unique and stands out from other tracks. So that's why I'm putting it in B tier. Maybe it's a little high. You could probably argue C tier for it, but I'm gonna put it in B tier. Um. Oh crap! I forgot about Sewer. Sewer is definitely a C tier track, I think. Um, just broken shortcut. If the shortcut worked better, it would be B tier. So yeah, that's Sewer. Let's see, what else do we have for B tier? I'd say B tier is just tracks that work functionally. So I'll go with Cortex. Cortex Castle. It works. It's not necessarily my favorite track to drive on, but it works for online. It's a good blue fire track, even though the blue fires at the end of the track, like Polar and Out of Time, Tiny Arena, and that kind of makes it an issue. Um, the track's really wide, and missiles can catch people here. Um, yeah, not really too much to say about Cortex. It's just a track that works, and it's fun. So I'll put it in B tier. Next, it's CNK's Cortex Castle, Clockwork. Um, I gotta put it ahead of Cortex though because it's got a cool shortcut. Other than that, it's functionally really similar. I guess the track is slightly slower, so it makes it a little easier to drive on. Both tracks have fairly tough reserves, but they're not as hard as Out of Time, so it makes it like not impossible to play, but it makes it like challenging, which I think is fun for online and just makes it work well. So yeah, we'll go with Clockwork in B tier. I think I'm gonna put a pulse with track here. We'll go with both Turbo and Retro because they're pretty much the same track in online. Um, these tracks, yeah, they're pretty much the same. They're slightly different in unrestricted with how you interact with the walls, but I'd say that out of the pulse wood tracks, it's probably the most broken because you can just get infinite. You can do a really fast engine, and then you'd have some infinites as well, which any extra reserves in this track is really good. Um, so yeah, I'll go Turbo and B tier. You could probably argue it to be an A tier, but I think that it's a really solid track regardless. Let's see, what else should we put in B tier? I'll go with Koala. It's another Pulsewood track. It's just kind of stupid, and in like not a bad way, but it's just like a circle. So, but it functions well as a circle. Good item placement. It's really wide, so you can make some cool plays. Good pulse wood. Uh, Surprisingly pretty good considering it's just a circle. So I'll leave it at there. Let's see. We'll go with prehistoric as well. This track's actually pretty broken, but in a fun way, which makes no sense if you don't play this game. But if you know what I mean, then you know what I mean. Prehistoric has a lot of spots where you can dodge orbs, and I'd probably put an A tier if the speed ghost was allowed, but it's not. So B tier is where it's gonna be. Um, yeah, not much else to say with B tier. I think we can move. Oh wait, Megamix Mania. We're gonna put in B as well. Similar to Prehistoric, it's Blue Fire track. Probably knock it up a tier, maybe even two if the Speed Ghost was allowed, but it's not. So it's in B tier. And yeah, we'll move on to A tier now, and I'll start off A tier with Assembly. I think that this is just a really good track for Nitro Fueled. Um, if you fall way behind here, it's not too big of a worry because there's enough box chains to roll masks to catch up, but it doesn't feel like it's too much boxes. So you can just like it flows really well. Um, I think that this track plays really good in online. Not really too much else to say here. I think it's just one of the better sacred tracks for this game. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Um, Next up, I'm gonna put Ruse. I think that Ruse is just one of my favorite tracks to drive on. I think that it would be S tier if we just allowed speed ghosts, but we don't, so it'll be an A tier. Um, yeah, I think that engine pulse would makes this track fun. Makes it a little broken, I think, which yeah can be a little problematic, but I enjoy playing it, so I'm gonna put it in A tier. And yeah, next I'm gonna put Papu's. Just a really difficult track to drive, but also really fun and rewarding if you know how to get around here quickly. Not any issues with the track. I do think that it's a little too difficult to put in S tier for like the average player. So that's why I'm gonna put it in A. But yeah, really solid track, really fun to drive. Got no complaints. Um, Next, I'm gonna go with Drive Through Danger, another really solid Blue Fire track. Um, the orb can be a little stupid here if it catches you in the wrong spot. Uh, Actually, you know what? Nah, I'm gonna put it in B tier behind Prehistoric and Megamix. I don't think it's good enough to be in A tier. It's all right, but yeah, I just forgot about it in this list here, so it went in B tier. Yeah. Um. Next, well, let's see. Another B tier track that I missed is Coco Park. I just out of the Pulsewood tracks, it's like it's not amazing to play on. Like it's really engine dependent here. Like you'll see guys go backwards for an engine, and I don't know. It's all right. It's fun, but I think it's just too engine dependent for what it's trying to be. It is fun though. I'd make it A tier if it had the speed ghost. So yeah. Um, A tier Coco Park is Crash Cove for similar reasons. I don't think that engine is as overpowered here as Coco, but it's still like pretty strong here. Um, there is more counterplay to it. It's not quite as wide as Coco, so you can like if you're in the front, you can make plays to like stop the guy from full splitting. Um, but yeah, I think it's just a slightly better version than Coco and more fun to play as well. So I'll put Cove in A tier. Um, Next, I'm gonna go with Oxide Station. This track does have its issues. It does have a lap hit, or a not a lap hit, but a lap glitch problem here, but it doesn't happen too often. I think it's probably one of the better Blue Fire tracks to play in this game. It's just Oxide Station. There's not really much else to compare it to. It's challenging. It's fun. The reserves are hard, but they're only really hard if you want to like push hard here. I just said hard very many times, but yeah. Oxide, fun track. Gets a little tight sometimes though when there's a lot of people, so that can be a problem. But usually you have pretty good races here when I play it, so can't really complain too much. And to round out A tier, I'm gonna put Nina's. I think that this track has it definitely has some issues. Like I think that there might be too many boxes on this track, so people just spam their items without thinking, which I don't think is really healthy for an online track. But regardless, it's still a really fun track to drive, especially how the start works. I think it's definitely one of the more skill dependent tracks in online these days, which makes it pretty cool to play, pretty fun. Um, yeah, that's Nina's, and that'll round out A tier. Now, with S tier, ooh, what track should I start with? I think I'm gonna start off with Hot Air. This is probably more of a personal favorite of mine, which is maybe why I'm being a little tough on it here. You could probably argue this track to be A tier or B tier, but I enjoy playing this track. I think that the air brake shortcut makes it really fun to play. It allows you to be aggressive, um, which makes the track pretty fun. The pad's not in a terrible spot, and if you like die as you're hitting the pad, you can jump back and whatnot. It's unlike like a tiny temple, but really fun track. Don't really have any complaints about it. We'll move on to the next track, which I'm gonna put as Mystery Caves. If it wants to do the thing. Mystery Caves, a really solid Sacred Fire track here. It's got a nice engine spot. Lap ones are always really interesting here because you can go wide and make it work, go tight. It's always really cool to see how lap one plays out here, which sets up the rest of the race. I think that this track works very well in online and don't really have any complaints with it. It's just a really solid track. Um, Next, I'm gonna go with no, not Inferno. I'm gonna go with Tiger Temple. Um, Another really fun track to play online. The shortcuts here make it pretty fun to play, even if they're unintended. Interesting lap ones play out here. It's a bit of a broken track, to be honest with you. I guess it's either a track that you either love it or you hate it. I guess I fall in the camp that I love it. So I'll put it in an S tier. It's my list, so suck it. Next I'm gonna go with Inferno. This is probably the most out of like the hardcore engine pull switch tracks. This is probably the most balanced one because yes, you can almost make a full loop here, but you can't almost make a full loop unless you have multiple engines. But you do get slowed down. There is some sort of balance to it. Um, it's just a slightly better version of Crash Cove for online, I think. But you could probably argue it to be A tier. I think that it's a solid track though. Next though, in second place, I'm gonna go with Slide. This track is just crazy because it's basically a whole love track to see who can get engines, which CTR didn't really have a track like that until Engine Pulse Squid was found. But it makes it a really fun track to play. Always crazy plays going on here with engine and whatnot. It turns one of the most boring tracks in the game to something really fun to play in online. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than that. It's just really crazy track. But my number one track for online has to be Engine Labs. I just think that in general, this is Nitro Fueled's best track. It's cleanest looking track. There's no broken walls here. There's nothing that's functionally wrong with the track. Maybe you could argue the barrels, but the barrel hitboxes are a little cheesy sometimes, to be honest with you. But it's a Blue Fire track. It just works. I don't really know how else to say it. It's what Nitro. I think that if you wanted to show someone who's never played this game, like gameplay of an online track, I would show them Engine Labs. I think that it just functionally shows the best components of CTR in one track, and it works really well for online time trials, regardless, whatever. Can't go wrong with Engine Labs. So this is my list. You can drop all your complaints in the comments below. I'm not gonna read any of them. Actually, no. I'll probably read some of them and maybe clown on you. But whatever. Um, that's it though. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe for more content, and yeah, that's it. Take it easy.